I was halfway up the steps of Whitmore Funeral Home when my daughter planted herself in the doorway, blocking me like I was some stranger trying to sneak into a private event. "Dad, you don't belong here." Her voice was sharp enough to cut through the muffled organ music spilling from the chapel. Behind her, I caught glimpses of black coats, polished shoes, and faces turning toward us with the same kind of curiosity people get when they see flashing lights on the highway. My name's Raymond Harlow, 62, born and raised in Minnesota. For 40 years, I fixed furnaces and air conditioners for people who'd freeze without them in January or melt in August. I put in overtime every winter, every summer, every holiday season to make sure my daughter Emily had everything she needed. Ballet lessons at the Y, braces, even that first used Honda she swore she'd pay me back for. Her mother, Clara, and I split 20 years ago. She left for Chicago chasing a real estate career that ended up making her millions. She took Emily with her when our girl was 19, promising me we'd all stay close. 6 months later, the calls slowed, then stopped. For 15 years, the only updates I got about Emily came from Christmas cards Clara sent out of obligation. Now, Clara was dead, and I was standing outside her funeral like an uninvited guest. Emily crossed her arms, the thin diamond bracelet on her wrist catching the winter light. "Mom wouldn't want you here," she said, not loud enough for the whole room, but plenty loud for the row of mourners near the door. I could have walked away. God knows it would have been easier than standing there, taking the silent judgment of every pair of eyes behind her. But I'd driven 2 hours through sleet to be here, wearing the only suit I owned, the one I bought for a buddy's wedding 10 years ago. "I came to pay my respects," I said, my voice low, steady. "You lost the right to do that a long time ago." Her gaze didn't waver, and for a moment I saw Clara's stubbornness in her eyes. A man in a dark wool coat approached from inside. Mid-50s, silver hair, calm expression. "Mr. Harlow?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm Thomas Keegan, Clara's attorney. I'll need you and Emily at my office after the service for the reading of her will." Emily's head snapped toward him. "Why? He's not family anymore." "Your mother specifically named him in her will," Keegan said, not looking away from me. "His presence is required." The air seemed to thin around us. My name. In Clara's will. She'd sworn, after the divorce, I'd never see another dime of her money, and I believed her. Emily let out a sharp laugh, but there was no humor in it. "This is just some formality. Don't think for a second this means anything." She stepped aside just enough for me to pass. Inside, the scent of lilies and polished wood hit me, along with the low murmur of voices. The chapel was all warm light and expensive detail, mahogany pews, stained glass catching the pale winter sun. At least 100 people were packed inside, most of them strangers in tailored black. I slid into a seat in the back, trying to be invisible, but the whispers found me anyway, my name in low voices, a few heads turning, a woman in pearls leaning toward her husband. I caught the words ex-husband and after everything. As the service began, I kept my eyes on the floor, letting the pastor's words roll past me. I thought about the winters Clara and I spent in our first apartment, before the ambition and resentment set in, about Emily's 5th birthday party in that drafty living room, balloons taped to the walls, Clara laughing as she cut the cake. When the final hymn faded, people lined up to offer Emily condolences. I waited until the crowd thinned before standing, hoping to slip out quietly. "Mr. Harlow." Keegan was suddenly beside me again, his tone polite but insistent. "We'll head over now." Emily appeared on my other side, every muscle in her jaw tight. "Don't get your hopes up," she murmured. "Mom made sure you'd walk away with nothing." I followed them out into the brittle winter air, my breath fogging in front of me. The three of us walked down the icy sidewalk toward a black Lincoln parked at the curb. Keegan opened the rear door, gesturing for us to get in. I slid onto the leather seat, the warmth from the heater sinking into my bones. Emily sat stiffly beside me, scrolling her phone like I wasn't there. As the driver pulled away from the chapel, I stared out the window at the frozen Mississippi, wondering what in God's name Clara had written that would require me to be here. The car turned toward downtown, and a thought I couldn't shake settled in the back of my mind. If Clara really had wanted me here, it wasn't by accident, and whatever she left behind, it was about to change everything. Keegan's office sat on the top floor of a sandstone building that had probably been here since the logging days. The elevator was one of those old brass-gated ones that groaned on the way up, the kind you didn't find much outside of small-town Minnesota anymore. Emily kept her eyes on her phone the whole ride, pretending I wasn't 2 feet away. The receptionist ushered us into a corner office with tall windows overlooking the frozen river. Keegan gestured to 2 leather chairs in front of his desk, but Emily dropped her coat on one of them and took the other, forcing me to sit farther off to the side. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. On one wall hung a framed photo of Clara, mid-50s, hair swept back, in front of a ribbon cutting for one of her condo towers. She was smiling, but it wasn't the smile I remembered from our early years. It was sharper, more like a victory grin. Keegan began in that slow, deliberate voice lawyers use when they want you to pay attention to every word. Your mother's will is straightforward in some respects, complicated in others. Emily leaned forward. Let's just get to it. He read the first part quickly. Small bequests to charities, a scholarship fund in her parents' name. Then he looked up. To my daughter Emily Harlow, I leave the condominium at Lakeshore East in Chicago, and the sum of $250,000, contingent upon the property not being sold or rented for a period of 5 years. Emily's expression faltered for half a second before settling back into polite confidence. I could almost hear her calculating the value in her head, easily 7 figures if she held on to it. But then Keegan cleared his throat. The remainder of the estate will be detailed in the following section. The remainder. The word hung in the air. I wasn't supposed to be in the remainder. He shuffled papers, and my eyes caught a page in Clara's handwriting. Even from where I sat, I recognized the looping C she used when she was in a hurry. Mini twist came without warning. Your mother sold Harlow Properties 6 months ago, Keegan said. The proceeds, after taxes and obligations, totaled just over $40 million. Emily blinked. She sold the company? Why didn't she tell me? Keegan didn't answer. Instead, he looked straight at me. Raymond, to you, your former husband, Clara, bequeaths the remainder of her estate, $38.7 million, plus the family home in St. Paul. The words didn't land at first. They just drifted in the space between us until Emily broke the silence. This is a joke, she said flatly. He hasn't been part of her life for 20 years. My mouth went dry. All I could think of was the last time I'd been in that house, packing boxes after the divorce, while Clara barked instructions into a Bluetooth headset about a condo deal. She left a letter explaining her decision, Keegan continued, ignoring Emily's rising volume. She asked that I read it aloud after this portion of the will. Emily's chair scraped back as she stood. You will not read anything she wrote to him in front of me. This is fraud. That's enough, I said before I realized I was speaking. My voice was steady in a way I didn't expect. Let him read it. Emily turned on me, eyes blazing. You think this means you've won something? That you can waltz back in after all these years? I don't think anything, I said quietly. I didn't ask for this. Keegan opened the envelope, the sound of paper against paper louder than it should have been. Raymond, he began, if you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. I know this surprises you. You're probably wondering why I would leave you the bulk of what I've built. The answer is simple. You were the only one who ever told me no when it mattered. You tried to keep me from losing myself in all of this. I didn't listen, and I regret that more than you'll ever know. I stared at my hands, the old scars from years of work catching the afternoon light. For a moment, I was back in our first apartment, watching her fix her hair in the mirror before a sales meeting, the way she used to glance at me like she was making sure I was still there. Emily's voice cut through it. She was manipulated. There's no other explanation. Keegan set the letter down. Your mother was of sound mind. She made this decision deliberately. She wanted Raymond to have the means to do what she could not, repair what was broken. Emily looked like she might throw something. If you think I'm just going to accept this... Her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at the screen and for a second her face went pale. Whatever she saw there wasn't good news for her. She grabbed the phone, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out of the office without another word. I sat there in the sudden quiet, the snow falling harder outside the window. Keegan folded his hands. Raymond, there's more in her letter, and it involves a request she made specifically to you, one that may complicate things. I looked at him, heart thudding. What kind of request? He slid the sealed second envelope toward me. She wanted you to decide Emily's future. I turned the envelope over in my hands, feeling the weight of it like it might burn straight through my skin. Keegan sat patiently across from me, his elbows resting on the desk, eyes steady. Outside, the snow kept falling, muting the noise of the city until it felt like the whole world had narrowed to this one moment. I broke the seal. Inside was a single page of Clara's handwriting, the ink pressed hard enough into the paper that I could feel the ridges with my fingertips. Raymond, it began, I know this will put you in an impossible position, but if you're reading this, it means I trust you more than anyone else to do the right thing. Emily is my daughter, but she's also yours. You may not have raised her into adulthood, but you gave her the foundation she needed. I want you to decide how much of this money, if any, she should inherit beyond what I've already given her. I had to stop and read that part twice. Clara wasn't asking me to manage the estate. She was giving me the power to change Emily's future with a single choice. Emily's voice rang in my head from the chapel. You don't belong here. Followed by the memory of her at 8 years old, asleep on the couch with her head in my lap, while I pretended not to cry during some sappy Christmas movie. Why me? I muttered. Keegan folded his hands. Because she believed you'd see past the grudges. She also believed Emily wouldn't learn what she needs to if it was simply handed to her. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. My daughter hated me, or at least thought she did, and now I had the power to prove every bitter thing she'd said, or to prove her wrong. Before I could speak, the door swung open. Emily stepped back in, cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes sharp. I just got off the phone with my attorney. We're filing an injunction first thing Monday. This is over before it starts. Keegan's tone didn't change. An injunction won't hold. Your mother's mental competency was certified in court. Everything here is airtight. Emily turned to me, her voice dripping with disbelief. You can't seriously think you're the right person to control my future. Something in me shifted. Maybe it was Clara's letter still warm in my hands, or maybe it was 15 years of being the villain in her story. That's exactly what your mother thought, I said quietly, and now it's my call. Her eyes went wide. What does that mean? I didn't answer. Not yet. Because part of me was enjoying the fact that, for once, she didn't have the upper hand. Keegan slid a folder across the desk toward me. You'll need to review the asset breakdown, bank accounts, trust options, property valuations. There's also the matter of the St. Paul house. Clara left it to you outright, but she wanted you to decide if Emily ever lives there again. The St. Paul house. Our first home, the same one I'd left with nothing but 2 duffel bags and a half-empty toolbox. I could still picture the marks on the kitchen doorframe where we'd measured Emily's height every birthday. Emily's voice cut in, low and hard. If you use this to punish me, you'll regret it. I have connections too. Mini twist landed right there. You think this is punishment? I asked. I haven't decided what it is yet. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't reply. Instead, she snatched her coat and stormed out again, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the windows. Keegan exhaled slowly. She's not going to make this easy for you. I laughed once, no humor in it. She never has. He tapped the folder. You have until the end of the month to decide how much she gets. But once you decide, it's final, no changes, no appeals. I slipped the letter into my inside pocket, feeling its weight against my chest. Part of me wanted to hand her every penny, just to prove I wasn't the man she thought I was. Another part wanted to give her nothing, to let her learn, really learn, what it's like to build something from the ground up. The truth was, I didn't know which part of me would win. As I left the office, the cold air hit me like a slap. Across the street, Emily was getting into a black SUV, her phone pressed to her ear, her free hand slicing the air in sharp gestures. Whatever she was planning, it wasn't going to be pretty. And as I walked to my car, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about rewriting the story she'd been telling herself for 15 years. The first move would have to be mine. 3 days after the will reading, I walked into the downtown branch of North Star Bank with Clara's letter in my inside pocket and a knot in my stomach. The snow outside had turned to that gray slush that soaks through your boots, and the air inside smelled faintly of paper and fresh coffee. I wasn't here for a withdrawal. I was here to take control. The branch manager, a thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, led me to a private office. Mr. Harlow, we've already transferred the sale proceeds into the estate account, he said. As executor, you now have full authority. The words felt surreal. For most of my life, I'd balanced bills down to the penny, waiting for the electric company's pink notice before paying. Now, I had more zeros under my name than I could wrap my head around, but I also had Clara's instructions, to use it for good and to decide Emily's share. The first step wasn't about money, it was about the company. Flores Realty Midwest, rebranded after the sale, still had the same core team. They didn't expect me to walk into their glass-walled Minneapolis office that afternoon, wearing my old Carhartt jacket and work boots. I got a lot of raised eyebrows and awkward smiles as I made my way to the conference room. The CEO, a sharp woman named Linda Torres, extended her hand. Mr. Harlow, we didn't expect— You work for me now, I said, shaking it. So I figured I should see where my money's being made. We sat down, and Linda began explaining quarterly numbers, property portfolios, pending acquisitions. Half of it was a foreign language, but I kept my eyes on her and the rest of the board members, letting them see I wasn't here to be a silent owner. Mini twist landed when Linda slid a document across the table. We've had interest from an investment group in Chicago. They want a controlling stake. Your daughter has been in contact with them. I stared at the page. Emily's name was right there in the email header, proposing a sale that would gut the company's assets. She was trying to cash out before I even decided her inheritance. I leaned back, heart pounding. Is this legally binding? Linda shook her head. Not without your signature. The old me might have confronted Emily immediately, let my anger dictate the move. But Clara's voice in that letter kept echoing. Use wealth as a tool for good, not as a weapon. So I smiled. Tell them I'm interested, but the terms will change. 2 days later, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her SUV took up 2 spaces in the icy lot, and she walked in without knocking, still wearing a coat with a fur-lined hood. I know about the Chicago deal, I said before she could open her mouth. Her chin lifted. Then you know it's the smart move. We can both walk away with tens of millions. We? I asked. You mean you? She gave me that smirk I remembered from her teenage years, the one that used to make me feel like the smallest man in the room. You think you can run a company like this? You fixed boilers for a living, Dad. This is way over your head. Twist hit like a hammer. I slid a folder across the table. Inside was the revised sale agreement, selling only a non-controlling stake to the Chicago group, at a higher valuation, with 20% of the profit earmarked for a housing initiative in low-income Minnesota neighborhoods. The rest stayed in the company, under my control. Her smirk disappeared. You can't sign this without me. I leaned forward. Actually, I can. I own 65%, and the board's already on my side. The color drained from her face. For the first time, she realized the power dynamic had flipped. This isn't revenge, Emily, I said quietly. It's me doing what your mother asked, making sure this money does more than just make someone rich. She stood abruptly, knocking the chair back. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but I won't regret not selling out for quick cash. She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the blinds. Through the window, I watched her stalk across the lot, phone already at her ear. I knew she wouldn't give up, and I knew the next move she made would be bigger, dirtier, and aimed straight at me. That's why I wasn't surprised when, 3 nights later, a thick envelope slid under my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a stack of printed emails, my emails, taken wildly out of context, with a note on top in the block letters. The board will see these Monday. Enjoy your weekend. The envelope lay open on my kitchen table, the stack of printed emails spread out like a crime scene. Most were mine, sure, but chopped up, stripped of context, stitched together to make it look like I'd been funneling company money into personal accounts. Anyone who didn't know better might believe it. Snow ticked against the window. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips as I picked up the phone and called Linda Torres. She answered on the second ring. Linda, I just got something you need to see, I said, and I think you'll recognize the sender's fingerprints all over it. 30 minutes later, she was at my apartment, brushing the snow off her coat before stepping inside. She didn't need more than a glance. These came from Emily, she said. I saw the originals last week. She must have pulled them from the archive before we locked her access. It was exactly the opening I needed. We spent the next 2 days combing through server logs, access histories, and the metadata embedded in those documents. It all pointed to one account, Emily's. She hadn't even bothered to cover her tracks. I wasn't angry anymore. I was cold. Cold, in a way, I hadn't been since the day she walked away from me at 19. By Monday morning, I walked into the boardroom with a neat binder under my arm. Emily was already there, wearing a steel gray suit and that familiar smirk. She must have thought her evidence had reached them first. I want to address the accusations that have been circulating, I began, and I want to do it with complete transparency. I laid out the binder, page by page, her access times, the altered file histories, the original unedited emails. Gasps broke out around the table. Emily's smirk wavered, then vanished. Forgery and defamation are serious charges, Linda said flatly. Given the evidence, I'm calling for an immediate vote on removing Emily Harlow from all current and future positions within this company. The vote was unanimous. Emily stood there, hands trembling, as the legal counsel slid a termination letter across the table. You'll also be hearing from our attorneys regarding civil damages, he said. Mini twist came when Linda added, We've also notified the state licensing board. You'll be barred from working in real estate in Minnesota for the foreseeable future. Emily's eyes darted to me, pure venom in her gaze. You planned this. I met her stare. Number you did. Security walked her out. The echo of her heels in the hallway was the only sound until the board meeting resumed like nothing had happened. But the real twist was still waiting. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from Clara's attorney. Apparently, she'd set up a separate trust for Emily. It would release a modest yearly stipend, but only if Emily completed 2 consecutive years of documented employment outside the family business. The kicker? I was named as the sole trustee. I didn't smile, not right away. It wasn't victory in the way people think of revenge. It was balance. The scales righting themselves, not because I forced them to, but because Clara had known who Emily might become and had planned for it. I signed the acceptance paperwork and sent it back, feeling lighter than I had in years. The lesson? People will tell themselves stories about you, some cruel, some flat-out lies. But if you keep your hands clean, you don't have to fight to rewrite them. The truth has a way of standing up on its own, and sometimes it even speaks for you after you're gone. If you've been through something like this, family, betrayal, unexpected justice, I'd like to hear it. Drop your story in the comments. And if you want to be here for the next time I pull back the curtain on something I've lived through, stick around. You never know when the next twist will land.